Oh, we're back. My name is Matthew Leffler. I am the armchair attorney, real life lawyer, also adjunct law professor at Michigan State University College of Law, so green. There's been a lot going on in the supply chain if you've been paying attention. I have. My phone is off the hook. I turned it off. No more calls. We're not talking about all the big headlines, or maybe we are. Freight doesn't stop. That is something we know to be true no matter what legal cases are happening, no matter what regulations are occurring, what proposed regulations may be in store for us. But what we do know is people need their stuff and they need it delivered safely, on time, and undamaged. And few people know that business better than my very special guest, Bill Driegert of DAT. Dial a Truck. Oh, that's right. Dial a Truck. Since 1978, DAT has been helping people move freight all across this great country of ours. And like I said before, freight doesn't stop. Bill's background in supply chain is legendary. Number 4 employee at Coyote. Spent time with some of the greatest technology companies that have ever existed, like the folks at Uber Freight as the co-founder of that division. Oh, we have a lot to talk about, but first, as you all know, this thing doesn't happen but for your support, your engagement. And if I continue to scream at you in person or scream at you through the interwebs, I certainly hope you take it from a place that I love this business. There's so much to get excited about and so much to be like, wait, is that true? Like last week, we had International Road Check. Do you know that 1 in 5 commercial vehicles at any given moment is unsafe at any speed? Yeah, about 22% is the national out of service rate. We've seen some preliminary numbers coming in from International Road Check. I've heard some numbers up to 32% of vehicles inspected have failed. If that doesn't concern you, I don't know what will. But the biggest news we have in supply chain came last week with the decision in the Montgomery case before the United States Supreme Court. I have been all over the place talking about this. We've covered this before. It's been an issue we've all been wondering. How will the Supreme Court come to terms with the question of whether a broker should be held responsible for hiring an unsafe motor carrier if they had essentially a unreasonable carrier vetting process? Well, we don't have an answer as to what is an unsafe motor carrier just yet. And we also don't have an answer to what is a reasonable carrier vetting process. The only way we'll ever know that answer is through, that's right, litigation. Your favorite people, the lawyers and the judges and the juries, will be hammering out this regulation, this new law in the months and years ahead. But preliminary numbers are kind of concerning. Many brokers are reporting increases of their liability insurance for the premiums by 2 to 4%. That's a substantial increase, and we're just getting started. We're way too early in the process to tell you exactly what this will end up looking like, but we finally do have uniformity, and that's kind of a win, isn't it? Getting uniformity is never a bad thing, unless, of course, you have 50 different state standards, which we'll find out. Now, enough of us talking about the law. We have to move to our very special guest. And of course, I have to shout out our other great sponsor, Genlogs, Ryan Joyce, cameras, freight intelligence, truck intelligence. All across this country, there are cameras monitoring the highways, looking for trucks and trailers, helping people find lost or stolen freight. And it is a big problem. There's billions of dollars a year. That's billions with a B that are stolen through organized criminal cartels, taking away Guy Fieri's tequila or other things like Tucker Carlson's nicotine pouches that compete with Zyn. I think it's ALP or ALP. I don't know. I don't do those things. So please support our sponsors. They are phenomenal. And again, if you're new to DAT, I can save you money. I can save you money by clicking the link below. You can save 10% off your first year of DAT. That is a good deal. And that's why I helped negotiate that with my very special guest, Bill Driegert. Bill, how are you, my friend?
Doing well. By the way, I love that funky bass line on your intro.
So I will tell you this. I went to, I think he might be a mutual friend. I'm not sure. Tristan Nolan from Werner Enterprises. He is in charge of a lot of the data and technology and new technology deployment, that things like autonomous trucks and everything. I said, hey, Tristan, can you use AI to make me music? He's like, I can use AI to make you music. So I have AI music. Absolutely.
Just like a funky intro.
I told him, I said, I wanted it to feel kind of like chaotic. So it's got some little bit of chaos in there and a nice little beat. And he gave me a couple samples. So Tristan, I will make sure to send a clip of this specific part to you. So Bill, if DAT is looking for some cool tunes, I highly recommend Tristan Nolan.
DAT theme music? Yeah, I gotta.
It's been since 78. You got to have something, man. Okay. Yeah. So how long have you been at DAT now?
Oh, it's so it was end of July when deal closed and I came over. So 1st of August. So
okay. So do you like to call it DAT or DAT? What is the proper way to say it?
DAT.
Okay.
Dial truck. Yeah, dial a truck.
It is the best description of a business I've ever heard. Like the old days, you're a truck driver, you're trying to get home, you go to a travel center, on the wall is the load board, and then you have a phone number and you dial the truck. It's incredible. So how has it changed for you? So you came in with the Convoy acquisition from Flexport. What has it been like this first year? As you look back in the rearview mirror, what have you learned? What are you excited about?
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, the thesis of why all this came together was DAT's got this incredible platform, 47-year-old company. Every carrier and broker in the market, for the most part, is familiar with DAT or has used DAT. It's really how you find that truck or that load you need at the last minute. I mean, it's always sort of that use case. And that, starting with the truck stop and calling the board and seeing the loads, to now, of course, it's all digital. But there's a lot changing in the market. It's probably been the craziest few years I've ever seen in freight, with AI and SCOTUS and everything happening at the pace of change. But with all of that, like DAT recognized there's an opportunity to bring more services to the customers. And for Convoy specifically, that acquisition was part of a journey to drive more automation, to really allow those loads to actually execute on the platform, which is where this market is going. It's something I've been pushing through in this market for the last 10 years. This market doesn't always move super quick, but it's rapidly accelerating. And now with AI driving automation, that's even being a bigger forcing function. But that was the thesis. The thesis is we needed to bring automation across the entire platform to our carriers and our brokers. And that piece is rapidly accelerating and working. So it's been fun because being inside DAT and it's a pure tech company too. So for me, I've always worked in a company where I managed or had oversight of some operational element, and stepping away from that, it's just being able to focus on product and tech and building out new capabilities. That's been quite a transition too. It's been fun.
It's fascinating because when you look back at your career, you were with one of the most well-known brokerages at the cutting edge of the technology space, and the things we can do today, we could maybe dream of what they would look like with the technology, but it was no way to do it. And now we're in this world where, in a very real sense, the new people entering this business are digital natives. They've been in the technology space since the beginning. And that has got to be a big shift for how you approach, how you help carriers and brokers connect.
Yes and no, because yes, it's absolutely shifting, and you've got digital natives and you got people. Like, I love talking to mid-sized carriers. We we were at Matt's recently, right? And you talk to them, and like half of them are vibe coding, or they got like the young guy in the corner who just vibe coded a new TMS. And like the pace of tech and tech adoption and just what you can do now is so different. And it is true, like certainly at a generational level, like we were pushing a big change with Uber Freight, which is use an app, and Uber pushed that change on taxis. I mean, but that took, we're over a decade into that now. So like these things don't happen overnight, because everybody had to get used to using an app. First everybody had to get a smartphone, because if you go back like 2012, I think something like only 25% of drivers had smartphones, right? Which was only 14 years ago, right? So like now pretty much everybody has a smartphone, but these things take time. And that's probably the biggest lesson for me 20 years into the space, is like we've been pushing tech and tech change, but the future is already. One of my favorite quotes is like William Gibson, road necromancer. He has this quote about like the future's already here. It's just not evenly distributed, right? Because like you can
absolutely. I'm still printing off everything that I read. Like, so I like to, there's something about the material world that still kind of pulls me in.
Yeah. And everybody has different technology adoption cycles. And there still are, I saw this post the other day about like, there's like this, somebody talking about their carriers, and there's still carriers that like, they won't track, they won't use the phone, but they are always on time. They show up, like those people are still out there.
That's
and
right.
You can talk to anybody that's been in the industry for a long time. They're like, yeah, I got the one guy I can call and I've got that relationship. And the reason that, you know, it came to this, came to a point for me this week as well, where we were talking about AI. We just had our executive symposium, and we had some brokers on the stage and talking about AI adoption. And the point was made, like, if I'm calling, say I'm calling you every day and we got a relationship, and maybe those calls aren't super productive, maybe we're just chatting it up, but then one day I call and it's an agent. Well, that's a negative experience, right? Immediately,
fair,
my whole engagement with the company is now like, okay, well, I don't have a person to talk to. I preferred that. Now this is less preferred. And then, well, maybe I'll just go online next time, because now, like,
that's what they want me to do. They don't really want to have me calling them. That's right.
Yeah. But certainly, like, but then if I'm calling you and all of a sudden it's an agent, and then I call my buddy Joe and he picks up the phone, well, I'll probably start calling Joe first then, and then maybe I'll go to your website after that.
That's right.
That's why, like, it's hard to drive change quickly, because people have ingrained preferences that they've built over decades, and not only in like who they talk to, but how they do work, the platforms they use, how they, like, do you use your cell phone or do you use your laptop?
Right.
All these things just take time it's change management at massive scale. And because it's so fragmented, you have millions of nodes in that network that all need to move into the future. Not just
absolutely. I find myself like I'm a slow adopter for technology. I think maybe it's being a lawyer, or just maybe it's not liking to learn new things all the time. But now I'm like, there's how many social media platforms do you have to have? Well, at least a dozen. You can't just have 2 or 3. You got to have all of them. And as we watch, as Convoy has become so ubiquitous in the transportation space, that app became something that drivers loved. So you can get people to try something, but it's hard to get them to stay on it, helping them retain it. So what have you found in like the technology development and getting people to get engaged in technology?
I mean, you just got to keep pushing it. And some of it is going to be driven by just broader trends. Like the example I gave where 2012, only 25% of people had smartphones. So clearly smartphone adoption was one of those things that had to happen to really drive engagement. The Convoy platform is an interesting example, because when we acquired the Convoy assets at Flexport, one of the first things we did is reach out to carriers, and all the carriers had, like, they were still checking it, right? Because it had become part of their routine. So they were still checking it. And so that, like, they don't necessarily, again, that's like, once that habit is built, it's hard to break the habit, which is also why when we thought about branding and coming back to market, we're like, we got to keep the Convoy brand, because carriers know it. They, like, you log into the app, you see the C. We don't want that to just disappear one day and become
absolutely.
But yeah, I think it's sales. So as we're bringing the Convoy platform and DAT automation, this whole suite of capabilities to market, it's on the owner operator small carrier side. That's actually the easier part of it, because you just have to download an app, and if the load's there and you really want that load today, you're going to figure it out and you're going to make it work, right? I mean, particularly like if just say you're out in the middle of Wyoming and Convoy's the only place that has that load. Well, you're going to figure it out. You're going to make
that's right. That's right.
Right. But from a broker perspective, there's a lot more change, and every broker's going through some version of like the automation maturity curve right now. And you see this on AI adoption too. And this is one of the questions I asked on our AI panel yesterday. I was like, how many people are using AI actively in their business? And it's probably 30%. I mean, this is really a formal poll, but I thought it would be pretty high at this point, because we hear the stories and we know it's making an impact in certain areas, but it's still, it's process change, because it's not just about like taking what's out there and plugging it in. Oftentimes you have to re-engineer your process. A perfect example is like, if a load books on Convoy platform, do I pay my carrier rep commission, or do I pay somebody just for tracking, or do I pay a smaller commission so that they will, if something does happen, that the carrier calls in, that they'll be incentivized to do that. These are like the process questions that we can't answer just through technology, that there's an adoption and a maturity curve that a broker has to go through, because again, you're engineered for operating one way, and there's a huge variance in how brokers operate. And you can imagine even something like Chicago model versus cradle to grave. If it's cradle to grave, typically I'm more shipper oriented anyway, so I'm less worried about how the load is booked. But if I'm a carrier up and you're telling me, okay, well, there's a platform that can book it magically. Great, but like, how do I, like, what's my?
How do I make money in this?
Yeah, exactly. So those are all like, and every different brokers have gone through this in their own, because so like the big brokers have already deployed apps almost across the board. I mean, you hear from C.H. Robinson now, the pace at which they're trying to push automation and top down, right? But there's a lot of brokers in the middle or more traditional that, maybe they've just got different processes, and maybe they've got just legacy relationships that they don't want to displace, and that's how they cover most of their freight, right? Or there's just a different way of operating across the business.
Well, it's so interesting because I was at the executive symposium for DAT last year, and I had the opportunity to talk about, like, said, hey, what are the 3 biggest issues you think that brokers need to understand going into next year? And I was like, well, the 3 things I would think about would be broker liability, broker transparency, and IEPA tariffs. And my goodness, has it been a really interesting time. It feels like the progress of innovation is accelerated by current events. So just to get an example, we have, crude oil going up and barrels of oil very expensive. There's still up and downs. But if you had not been investing into alternative fuel or even thinking about alternative fuel, you're kind of at a disadvantage. Like, okay, what else can we do? And with broker liability now being what we're going to see across this country, it's this new question of, okay, what do I have to do to meet this new standard of being reasonable? I'd like you to kind of help me understand, like, the process by which a carrier goes from never using Convoy, the Convoy platform, to a carrier using the Convoy platform. What is that journey like? What do you have to learn about that motor carrier?
It's a great question, because when a carrier logs onto our platform, so they go through a full formal sign, like we're validating FMCSA, we're validating their insurance, we're doing a pretty comprehensive validation, we're getting their CDL, we're validating that their authority is valid, like their CDL is valid at a driver level. So we have a level of core onboarding that is already at a fairly high standard. And then we do ongoing monitoring, because there's the obvious stuff like service monitoring, and we field all that information back to the broker. So a broker can log in, and we continue to expand that. And our approach is very much like, we have a ton of data. How can we make this all available to our brokers? And how can we make sure that they're making the right decisions and they're setting the reasonable, defensible compliance standard on their side, that we're supporting that with as much data as we have available. We have all the standard stuff, because as a provider, as having been a history of a provider, I mean, it was all built within a broker. Like, all those capabilities were built out when back in the Convoy day. And for us, then it's more about how do we expose that and then allow our brokers to access that. But to get on the platform at all, we want to make sure it's a good carrier, that they're valid, that they have operating authority, that the driver has a valid CDL, and all that information is up to date. So we continually monitor it. And then we've talked quite a bit about we have a ongoing fraud monitoring system, which we think is best in class. We're not aware that there's similar capabilities out in the market in terms of what we've built, because we have full visibility of execution. So the carriers in our network, if we think they're at risk, that is something from a fraud perspective that will get kicked out for review. But ultimately, that then feeds up. So within the system, when a carrier signs up, they are signing up with basic T's and C's for the Convoy platform. But when they sign up with the broker, they're signing their broker carrier agreement through the platform. Broker has full control and visibility of the carriers that are signing up, and how they do additional vetting, that's within their compliance system and their compliance standards. So all that information is set up so that they can confirm it. But
go ahead.
Yeah, so it's almost, think of it like a 2-layer filter, right? And there's the basic, like, to get on the platform, you got to meet a certain standard, but then the brokers also, to be able to book their loads, to be confirmed on their loads, got to meet their standard as well. You got to go through.
What I love about this is it's not just like a carrier onboarding technology. It is the continuous monitoring. And that is, and again, for everyone who's watching and listening, don't take legal advice from a podcast. If you think you need a lawyer, you probably do. It's not me unless you're paying me. Then I'm happy to talk to you. But one of the things I think is going to be so critical in the months ahead is making sure your process is up to date with whatever the most latest kind of technology is, but having this continuation, iterative process of improvement. So often in this business, someone comes out with a big flash. They say, here's what we have. It solves this problem. And they're out of capital to go make future innovations. So you're kind of out of luck. What DAT has done is captured not just like the load board business, which is a huge part of what you guys do, but it's this other ancillary products that drive value for everyone in your little ecosystem. So you have the motor carriers, you have the brokers, you have the outgo platform. So there's the ability to do factoring. So you're helping a broker not just like find a qualified motor carrier, but you have all this ongoing continuous improvement on the backside. So if we don't know what the standard of care is yet, and we don't, this seems to be one that's kind of in the right place at the right time, I would think.
Yes, I mean, we think we've got a lot of capabilities, and we are I'd say, looking at the full spectrum of what we can provide. Sorry, my dog.
My dog's asleep; she can't hear us.
Well, yeah, a little bit of a side. We just got a little puppy too, so the puppy was whining.
This is the best thing about having a live show, because this is what real life is. It's trying to navigate my twins that are having their lunch right now, and the dog who wants to go see what they're having for lunch, but she's not going to get that, at least for right now.
But yeah, just to summarize that though, so I think we've got like incredible suite of capabilities and data. Some of that data is publicly available. Others, like Carve, is proprietary, and so. For us, it's also how we can support our brokers so that they can have a very rigid, tight compliance process that's repeatable, defensible, all the rest, which I think is the most important thing right now. Like, do you have rules? Are they defensible? Do you abide?
Do you do it consistently? That's the thing. Is the process something you consistently do? And I would imagine the Convoy platform does not give you a lot of ability to deviate from the standards you put in place.
I mean, it's programmatic, but the brokers ultimately will have their compliance standards, and they need to be compliant. So that's where, like, as the carrier gets surfaced to them, they got to make sure that they're tight with their process and consistent with their process. But yeah, absolutely. The technology enables consistency and repeatability, and like it never deviates. And so the more tech, like particularly with compliance, right? The fewer people in that process, the more you're using rigid standards and consistent sets of data and high quality pools of data, like the tighter your process is going to be. And so
you know a lot of brokers, you know a lot of people in the business. As we saw the Montgomery ruling, did you get people going like, the world is over? Or has it been more like, it seems like we've already had this in the 9th Circuit and we've had it in the 6th Circuit, so it's not a major difference. How have you felt about this so far?
Well, I think there's a lot of unknown unknowns. Ultimately, I mean, it is going to be, right, if you think about it from first principles, just putting everything else aside, there's a certain amount of risk that's already been baked into the system because these judgments have been happening. There's a whole pent up demand of these judgments or these cases that are likely then going to hit the system in the next year or so, which will likely potentially raise potential payouts, but nobody knows how, because this is what we don't know, right? We don't know how the case law might play out. But ultimately, over time, that'll settle into some incremental cost, or I mean, we don't know, or at a minimum, like, let's just say it's where it is now, and maybe it raises 1 to 2% in the market, but there's some amount of settlements which will eventually become a new baseline, and that new baseline will then be priced in through insurers, and insurers will ultimately be the lever by which that cost is distributed across the platform. And that's the risk right now. It's like, how's it going to hit the pocketbooks of brokers in terms of insurance? But that's all TBD. But
yeah,
they're the ones that are going to be monitoring these cases, figuring out what the payout and their loss ratios are, recalculating, and they're probably going to get it wrong right out of the gate. And next year they'll get a little more right, and the year after that it'll be a little more right. But then in the background, everybody's going to be trying to figure out, was this the right resolution, or where else could FMCSA step up? Right? There's so many open questions that I'm definitely not default to sky is falling. I think that it's like, just make sure your processes are tight, proceed as normally. As new information comes in, absorb it, adjust. Certainly, I think every broker is going to have a conversation with their insurer.
Yeah, so my presumption is, I'm always like, the sky is falling. I always, like, this as a lawyer and a father of 4 children, I assume everything is the worst case scenario. But I think you're probably right. This is still way too early to tell what the long-term implications are going to be. I think a lot of shippers that are running their own brokerages are going to be kind of hesitant to do that themselves. Maybe this is a moment for the 4PLs or to get more 3PLs involved to give you some shielding, some insulation. But I think if I'm a broker today, the first call I'm going to have is my lawyer, second call is my insurance company, and then it's my risk management team and saying, okay,
Yes.
what technologies do we have right now? And what have we not looked at yet? What are other things that are out there? Because I think the biggest challenge that brokers are going to face is they're going to face a challenge of, we've already done it this way. We haven't been sued yet. We don't need to make any modifications. And if you believe that, if you're in the thought process of everything we do is fine, that's when you get in trouble, because you have to now be in the same kind of mentality as the asset-based motor carriers, which is, okay, now we have collision avoidance systems. We have driver-facing cameras. We have forward-facing cameras. All of this technology becomes ubiquitous and it becomes the new standard. So I got to imagine, like, from your days at Uber Freight and thinking about autonomous trucks, like, this has got to be an interesting moment for the robots, because I don't think anyone's going to be like, oh, you negligently selected the T1000. Like, this guy's the best.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole different like liability problem, right?
I'm so excited about it. Well, because I guess we got to, like, May 15th, I think it was Friday, May 15th, we had the final comment period for a waiver of the FMCSA regulations for these beacon technologies. So the Auroras of the world had been going to the government trying to get waivers of some safety regs in order to allow the autonomous trucks. And I feel like that waiver is going to be granted another 5 years. So all of this stuff would last like 6 months, English language proficiency, non-domiciled CEOs. Now we're getting into, hey, maybe the robots are going to be here soon. Do you have any feelings on robots, Bill? Because I know you're a fan of the robots.
Yeah, I stay close to that industry, and being in San Francisco, like so in my background, I advised Otto, which was the first company to do
I remember them.
Trucking delivery.
Absolutely.
And all the team from Otto kind of then distributed out. So your Kodiaks and your Wabbies, like a lot of these companies ended up absorbing a lot of those engineers. And now Humble, which recently started, and I know the founder there pretty well. So definitely I stay close to that industry. I do think we're at this inflection point. I think there's probably going to be two paths in which this proceeds. One is the long haul path, which is where, Volvo Autonomous Solutions, PACCAR, all the OEMs are looking at, okay, well, how do we take ADAS plus, right, or like start to build these into the cab and the operation, which that operating model I think is still evolving, but that's where the most investment has been. I think the other is like local haul, like this is where the Bulls and the Gaddicks will kind of step in, or more, regional, where it becomes more of an extension of the facility and less about like the long haul. From a revenue and a TAM perspective, the long haul was always, I think, the bigger technical problem, but also the bigger TAM opportunity, which is why so much investment has been there. But anybody that's been in a robo-taxi, and sorry, my dog's going wild.
It's having a great time. He's so excited to hear about the talking of robots.
Yeah, I don't know.
A robot dog.
Pretty quiet. But if you've been, like, if you come to San Francisco, or all, like, they're broad distribution now, but you've been in a Waymo and you've been in it more than a couple times, you kind of like, okay, this is the future. This is where it's gonna go.
Absolutely.
We got robo taxis, and I don't know. I mean, my car, last couple of cars have had the automated. I don't have Teslas, so I don't have the full self-driving, but it's good enough. You hit the button and it goes, and it's like enough of those experiences accumulate that everybody starts to build more and more confidence. And that's actually what I've heard now, is when people go, like, people in this space that are going and selling these solutions, they don't get the pushback of like, is it going to work? Because more and more people just trust that it's going to work.
Absolutely.
So then it becomes about the business model and the cost and the rest.
I was in my very first Waymo maybe a month or two ago. I had been at the Truck Rental and Leasing Association, and I went and visited our mutual friend Shannon Breen from Freightvana. And he's like, let's put Matt in a robot taxi. I'm like, I have never been in a robot. But one of the things I found so interesting was the decision-making process of the robot when it came to changing lanes or the method that they made these decisions. And we're in this moment in time, I think, that we are going to see autonomous trucks at some point soon-ish. They're obviously running intrastate. So Kodiak and Aurora running within a given state. Some of them are doing some cross-state transportation. But we don't know what the regulations will be, and like, what will a remote operator have to have? Will they be CDLs? Will they be managing 10 trucks or 6 trucks or 100 trucks? But those rules are going to be written in the next 4 or 5 years. And so this is an exciting moment because like I talked to my father, he was a roadway guy back in the 70s, and his company he started in the 90s was following this trend of outsourcing fleet services, and he called the company Outsource Fleet Services. And it was the trend of people outsourcing like maintenance and driving. And we're watching this new transition of a very difficult, very dangerous industry, very blocking and tackling paper and all this into digital and automation. And it's incredible to watch it unfold. And we have no idea what it'll look like in 5 years. Are you excited about the future? Terrified of the future?
A little bit of both. I think obviously it's going to be hugely impactful for all of us in this space. And so there's a lot of unknown unknowns in terms of how it plays out. Obviously, it's going to be hugely impactful in terms of the workforce and how it rolls out. And I think this is also where, from a policy perspective, a lot of that will be dictated by the pace and how disruptive it is. And is it, because if it all of a sudden is disrupting jobs, I think you're going to see a lot more potential resistance, or, policymakers are going to get in front of it. So it'll be, there's so many unknowns, and it's going to be dictated again by the pace, by the particular use cases out of the gate in which it's successful. The ultimate implementation go-to-market models, which I'm still surprised how fragmented the thinking is on just go-to-market models, meaning some of these companies want to own the whole thing from end to end. Others just want to license the tech to OEMs. Some of the OEMs want to be carriers. Like we talk about version of the world and how they're thinking about it. And so there's more left to resolve than has been resolved by like multiple orders of magnitude.
That's why I love trailers so much, because no matter what pulls that trailer, it's still a trailer. You're not going to get a 70-foot trailer. It's going to be 53. It's going to have swing doors, maybe a roll up, maybe lift gate. So the technology for trailers is still going to be pretty much similar, maybe more connected trailers. But I think to your point, it's interesting. I use the example of Wabash. Wabash, publicly traded trailer manufacturer, they made a trailer as a service, so a trailer rental or leasing product. So they're trying to capture some new version of how people use equipment. And to think an OEM for trucks, like, I want to make the robot truck. Like, oh, you want to open that can of worms? Like, good for you. Good luck. But I think my feeling is, the upfitters. I think of AI companies and autonomous companies as upfitting existing units as opposed to at the factory level. But I could be totally wrong. But it's going to be fun to watch it unfold.
I think you're going to see both, because the cabless design is something that, that's what like Humble just came to market with. But I also, again, tech change takes so long in this space that, you're seeing it even with the rollout of, like, it's not like Waymos they've been doing this for well over a decade now too. So This is a decades-long change. And actually, there was an interview with Eyal, who's the CEO of Humble, where he his opinion was, I think every truck driver today is going to be a truck driver throughout their entire career. Like, this is going to be a slow enough change that it's not going to just disrupt things, but still, it is going to be material. Like, that's where you go forward in 20, 30, 40 years. It's hard to see how it doesn't try to change.
Just your point on the cabless truck. Then you don't have to have an air conditioner in the system. Like, oh my gosh, like all these components just start going away.
Yeah. And your comment about the trailers, if it's cabless, then you just have a shuttle. Like, what? It may never disconnect.
That would be a very interesting thing where the trailer becomes the most technologically advanced part of that asset.
You just put sensors on the trailer if you didn't disconnect it. So, like, there's a lot of all this though is like, these are still open questions. That's why it's like we're so early in that. But that's also why it's exciting. So I'm more excited because it's like watching change happen is like living through it is exciting. But it's like how it's going to play. There's so many unknowns that,
Well, I'm the same way, because like you don't know you're living in a historical moment until well after it's passed. But I think we're in this position, especially with you and your background in the industry, you're watching this kind of unfold and you say, that's where it's going to be. So as we sit today with all of the acquisitions that DAT has done, you had the trucker tools, you had Alco, you had the Convoy platform from Flexport. What have you learned now that you're inside the machine connecting these things? Like what has that experience been like? Because there's an after effect of acquiring its integration. So how is all of that playing out? How excited are you for the rest of this year?
Yeah. It's going like gangbusters. I think everything works. And so really now it's the making it all work together is the challenge we're in now. And I'd say we're like in the first phase of that process. So it's bringing the companies together, bringing all the institutions, making sure that the org is all structured correctly. Then from a tech perspective, making sure that the tech is all like coming together into a common uniform approach and back end and all that. We're kind of into that process now, which is exciting. I think the biggest cultural shifts for me just getting used to is one, going into, again, a pure tech company. So there's no ops, which, I mean, there's ops, like we take inbound calls and all that, but you're not managing loads.
You're not managing freight cradle to grave.
Which freight is so high frequency. It's like that there's always a buzz. And so it's a little more like, okay, putting software together, right? I mean, it's still like high pace in its own way, but that's a different adjustment. The other is that just that DAT has such breadth. I mean, it's 47-year-old company. So pretty much every large broker, every top 200 broker is a customer. And similarly, like on the carrier side, like carriers use it. So you have your customer base is so broad. And as a result, like there's a lot of customers that in my history working in the space, you can imagine being at the leading edge of tech, you're typically working with your early adopters or early majority or people that are like, oh yeah, let me try this out. It's new. As where with DAT, it is like, everybody uses it. So you've got every type of adopter. And so then when you do want to push change, you're kind of pulling the new early adopters, but it's been interesting, like being able to engage across the full spectrum, just to understand how many different ways people have been successful in this space, which is also something that part of why I just love freight in general is it is such an entrepreneurial, high hustle industry. And I think that's probably the other interesting thing I've seen happen too, is with like AI, is where people that you wouldn't expect to be at the front of the innovation curve are just like, yeah, I've got 10 trucks and I vibe coded this for fun. But it's because there's so many, everybody in the space you have to be an exceptional operator. You have to be very commercial. Like you have to have go to market and operations you have to be good at. And otherwise, then you have to be high agency. Like there's a lot of just driven entrepreneurs in this space. And those are the people too that are like, I've had all these ideas, I couldn't do them, and now I can do them because the tools are there.
It takes a special kind of person to get stuck in this industry, because I think what I think it's very similar for what you've kind of outlined is it's got this addictive nature to it, this chaotic, interesting, essential. Every other industry relies upon what we do. And it's like, man, like I don't want to do something else, even though people say I could do something else. Like, no, you can't. You're stuck here forever. I want to pull a thread that we talked about this when you first joined up with the DAT team, and one of the thoughts that I had heard, and this is on the interwebs, people saying, "Oh, this is DAT's approach to trying to disintermediate the broker, trying to compete them." And the first thing I was telling them was like, "Do you think that DAT wants to have unlimited liability for catastrophic incidents?" And like, "Oh no, yeah, they don't want that. So they're not trying to." But I'd love to hear your perspective. I'm sure you've heard this. What is the answer? How do you respond to somebody?
Yeah, absolutely not. No plans whatsoever. It's something that, because Convoy was a broker and people still, that's the one thing that, if I could wave a wand, it would be that the Convoy name never made it into brokers' minds, because there's still a perception of who Convoy was that it carries forward. And that was built over 10 years when they were in the market and made this massive investment. But when we bought it, we just bought the tech. And that was the whole point. Like, just take the tech, let's see what we can do with it. Let's bring it to everybody, democratize it, bring it to brokers. And that's the model that's working. And that model works. We no interest in chasing the old model. This is big part of the conversation for me 2 years ago, going through all these learnings with Convoy, is how it is so hard to build a tech company and a operating company at the same time, which is really the last VC wave from when Uber Freight and Convoy and we all came to market, was trying to build these tech-driven operators that would, because the tech was superior, would scale. And
I think that was the challenge, I think, for Convoy when they had to go into doing some operational broker stuff, because the only way to make great technology is to have people use it in real life, in the real use cases designed for. So to go and tell brokers, hey, you need to be really concerned about how you vet motor carriers, or you need to be really concerned about how cargo theft may affect your customers' freight. But 5 or 6 years ago, nobody cared. Nobody cared. But fast forward to today, and cargo theft remains the biggest issue facing most brokerages and a lot of motor carriers as well as shippers. I mean, I hear the numbers. Sometimes people say it's a $6 billion a year problem. Some say $35 billion a year problem. Regardless, it's a big problem. And so now the technology that was proven through Convoy initially and then gets into the hands of DAT through the Flexport acquisition, you've already tested it. And so that's why the truck drivers were going back to the platform looking for the thing. Maybe that's why they started their day. Maybe they didn't find what they wanted right off the bat, but they would start their day there. And so those habits are hard to break because they were so useful for them.
Yeah.
So I look at what you're into now. It's like, well, I understand freight brokers being, I think they're going to try to get rid of me. Like, robot trucks will do that, buddy. That ain't going to be DAT, but maybe.
I think we've largely gotten past that in the market. And the more these things come together, the more it will be clear. Like, it's DAT building automation into the marketplace. Like, and that's what we're here to do, and to the benefit of the brokers and the carriers and the partners on both sides of the market. And that's like DAT's 47-year-old company. That's been our business model the entire time. Like, why would we change that now with the SCOTUS ruling? Why would we take on?
Absolutely.
Like, if we position ourselves, like, we'd be the massive target. So, like, yeah, well, it would be suicidal from a business model perspective, and just structurally that was. I can tell you too that when even back at the Uber Freight days, when we launched Uber Freight, a lot of people had the dream that would be pure tech, but there was also this incentive in these early years at Uber Freight in that investment environment to get to revenues quick. And that's why a lot of companies, and you saw this even with like Motive and others, who they had a brokerage and then they got rid of the brokerage.
Yeah, like, okay, we did enough, we're done.
Yeah, because it was kind of there was a lot of companies in this tech space that they tried to build an operation because it was like a hack to get to revenues fast, to like impress the VCs.
Yeah.
And,
normally it's an EBITDA multiplier, but because I'm a technology company, it's revenue times 20. It's not a great deal.
There's a lot of, I'd say, broader confusion in the investment community that was just perpetuated by like driving these revenue numbers. And I think but it just reinforces that learning that the companies that did survive or come to the other side of that were either pure tech or repackage their whole model. Like,
absolutely.
They definitely doubled down on being just a tech-enabled service provider, as an example. They may not say that, but right.
When you were in the Flexport seat looking at the Convoy platform, were you thinking, man, I come from Uber Freight, I know a thing or two about trailers. Convoy had a lot of trailers. Was there any thinking like, man, wouldn't it be great if we had these trailers? So I can imagine trailers are amazing. Yeah. I completely understand that.
There's still some, like, they built some incredible tech. I just got asked by somebody today, like, could we relaunch that tech to manage their trailers?
Yeah.
If we did, it would be in partnership. And I do think there could be plays there over time, but certainly when we relaunched Convoy with that business model, taking on those trailers. Well, first off, the trailer, we didn't buy any of the legal contract. Like, we didn't buy the entity, so we didn't have any trailers or obligations there. But trying to go back to market and getting trailers to support that program, we built the pro formas and the P&Ls.
Did you guys get the trailer technology as part of the Oh, see, that's incredible. That's interesting. Just for our listeners, I love commercial trailers. I talk about this all the time. There's about 5 million trailers in the United States, and the average age of the trailers, obviously they vary, but it's probably 7 to maybe 10 years old. There's some that are much, much older, but I suspect you could get the same amount of work done with 4 million trailers as you could with 5 if you have good technology managing them. So a lot of big brokers, CH and Echo, who bought ITS, Freight Von, obviously, they all got into the trailer business, but managing trailers at scale, that is a challenge that FedEx Ground and Amazon still deal with. So it's an interesting area of the supply chain. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, it has to be solved with tech because the margins are so thin. And from a business model, it's just such a difficult business model. And the trailer, and we talked about, like, Wabash also was trying to do more of they have a more flexible trailer program now. There's been a lot of interest. It's one of those where if you polled like the top 10 broker CEOs and asked them, like, if there's 3 things you could have, what would they be? They'd probably all have like a trailer pool, dynamic trailer pool, or some version of that on that list. But then when you do the math and do the business model, it's just a tricky model. And like, kudos to the companies that continue to tackle this, because I fundamentally believe there's a huge opportunity there. And we had Power Loop at Uber Freight. That was
absolutely
at Uber Freight, and that's done reasonably well. But it's a tough one. I would love to be able to take this tech and find the right way to package that.
I could white label it for you, Bill. Just let me know.
It's a tricky one. It's like one of those that yeah.
So as we look forward to the future, so we've seen a monumental ruling in the Supreme Court. We've seen the tariffs, IEEPA ones get knocked down. The newest 122s also got knocked down. I'm sure those are in the process of being appealed. Looking ahead, like what are you most excited about for the back half of 26?
Oh man, I mean, just within our business, we're having a lot of success pulling these things together. So within DAT, like we've got a pretty healthy product rollout schedule that I think you're just going to see a lot of good things from us, which I'm excited about. I mean, the SCOTUS thing, I can't say I'm excited about it, but I'm curious. So certainly there's this like, okay, how's this going to play out? It's, you can't say excitement is excitement, not good or bad, but
it's anxiety and excitement are the same emotion, just how you characterize it.
It's good and bad stress. So it's interesting. It certainly makes it all more interesting.
That's right.
How that plays out. Yeah. What else? I mean, there's obviously the geopolitical stuff, like the oil and
I've heard there's an excursion. I've heard rumors of an excursion. Is that still rumor? Is that still true?
Yeah. Hopefully things get resolved. But yeah, I mean, the other is just, it's nice to be in an up market. So the number one thing that I'm probably excited about is we are definitely in an up market now. And, after a long bear market, I think it's good for carriers. It's depending on how brokers manage their books. It's good for brokers. It's certainly, if they're out in the spot getting those opportunities, it's good for brokers. Rising tide lifts all ships, but certainly like carriers, there's a lot of carriers that I think were right like at the limit that
they were all just white knuckling it, trying to survive. Just like we kind of talked before we started recording. I mean, the challenges for motor carriers coming into the rest of this year, fuel is obviously going to continue to be a challenge, but even the lubricants. So you change the oil on your truck. I mean, there's going to be a higher cost for a lot of these things. And yeah. I think the American shippers are starting to recognize, okay, we've been in the driver's seat for most of the last couple of years. We may not have that like we used to. And I think the Montgomery case reinforces that we need to have accountability at all levels of the supply chain. I do hope the FMCSA focuses a lot more efforts into the carrier vetting process. Perhaps Modus will do that. I feel like it probably will, but it's going to be a really interesting year, especially as we get the new highway bill put in place. So there's a lot to be cautiously optimistic about.
Yeah, and the FMCSA question, because the case law is going to determine what is a reasonable standard, but ultimately the FMCSA has to
that's right.
We step it up. So that's good. But yeah, when markets are volatile, it's usually what I always say is like from a carrier perspective, an up market is good and a down market is bad. From a broker perspective, a volatile market is good and a non-volatile market is bad. Because when it's volatile, shippers are because shippers now are like, hey, what's going to happen to my routing guide? I may need to go back to market. Maybe I'll bring in new providers. Like this one's not performing, because all of a sudden it's a pressure point. Markets are going up. They're going to go back out to market. And
absolutely,
carriers are going to say, nope, I can't take that freight, which creates churn in the routing guide, which means more freight hits the spot board, which means brokers pick that up. Like it drives more opportunities for sales in this.
Absolutely. When you're, go ahead.
No, I was saying it's hunting season from a broker perspective.
That's what I think is it's these bad times or different Supreme Court rulings or whatever. This is what makes great companies great. Like this is most of the industry is about feast or famine. And so how do you survive in good times? How do you survive in bad times? Uncertainty seems to be like the big story of 2026. Presumably maybe 27 gets a little bit less crazy. But I think like as we look at what we see in the headlines and behind the headlines, what always makes me so excited to collaborate with the DAT team is that you guys have your pulse on the supply chain and you want to help your existing customers by cross-selling more valuable products. And that I think is what should get a lot of people in the industry excited, because this is a problem that the government's trying to address, but you guys have been focusing on this problem for some time and putting capital to work to address those issues.
100%. And if you think about all those pieces together, as we have a very complete picture at a carrier and a broker level, and there's just a lot of data then. And that's where a lot of back at the exec symposium, a lot of those conversations are like, what else can we provide? How can we open up more? And it's a big focus for us to just empower carriers and brokers. On the carrier side too, like you want to know where you stand, right? You don't want to know what you got to do. You want to know like how are you going to get which brokers you can work with and who you have access to. And the more we can empower both sides, it just makes the market that much more efficient.
Absolutely. So as we get ready to wrap up our conversation, where can people find out more about the Convoy platform?
We go to dat.com and you just navigate to the Convoy platform there. You can also go to convoy.com.
There you go. And I will also, again, recommend everybody that in the show notes, there's a link that takes you to the same place Bill just described, but it saves you 10%. So I would urge you.
Yeah, you want to do that. You definitely do that.
Get some savings. It's a tough market. We're all trying to work together. I want to kind of close up with just a last kind of look at what we've seen in the supply chain. If you are talking to a owner of a brokerage, a small size brokerage, and they're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, what advice would you give to that broker about the technologies that are available and the moment in time that we find ourselves?
Yeah, I would say learn. Like, so first thing, if I were right now sitting with a broker and they said, I don't know what to do, like in terms of AI or automation or what's next, the first thing I do is I'd say, let's go to Claude, let's go to ChatGPT. Let's say, okay, what's your TMS? What are your size business? What are the good options? Let's start working through those. I'd probably make some recommendations on some good TMSs, then say, okay, what kind of AI tooling do you need? Are you cradle to the grave? What's your structure? Probably start just like iterating through that. I mean, the tools are so good now that it can help you work through that strategy as well. That's the first thing I would do, is go and just start asking it. But beyond that, I think it's critical to start like to be talking to these companies. Everybody wants to sell you. There is some VC subsidization of the learnings happening right now too, because there is so much investment. These companies are not yet profitable, which means like they're investing in these capabilities so that you don't have to make those same investments, right? And they're learning. And so talk to it's the Vumas and the Fleetworks and the Pallets and the Drum Kits, like all these companies out there. They will all be super eager to talk to you because they're all in scale mode, right? They've all got their growth targets they got to hit. And you can definitely learn a lot just by understanding what the capabilities are, because they'll be able to talk you through those. So if I were trying to figure out a tech strategy, I'd probably be meeting with one of these companies like every other day right now. And I spend a lot of time personally, like meeting or talking to them, understanding their positioning, their strategy, how this evolves. And then, of course, I would be using all the new capabilities of DAT. We've got, I would be understanding the Convoy platform. This is the way I describe Convoy is it's engineered automation. You hit a button, it's magic. It will remove those loads for you. I'd be, as we continue to build out CMS, which is a broker capability to set compliant standards and filter loads that show up on the load board. We'll continue to invest in those capabilities. I'll be learning those.
Yeah, I remember when you guys deployed that feature, someone had asked on Reddit about that feature. Like, how can I search by a certain amount of like authority time? And within I think it was like a week or two, Emily says, hey, here's that thing. I'm like, holy cow. So it's not just like you guys have built this suite of tools for the problems of today. It is the continuous improvement and iteration upon those things to help address the problems your customers have. So for a motor carrier out there, if you're not on Convoy's platform, you might want to check it out. Like, how long does it take to go from downloading that app to getting the ability to work with that app? What does that timeline look like?
Yeah, well, it's typically there's a holding period. So you go through, you sign up, and then within 24 hours, you're good to go as we do the final reviews. But then once you're set up, go in, you bid, you book it. You can book. I hear this from carriers all the time, but it's also true for brokers. Like that load will book at 2 a.m. And from a broker perspective, that's magic. I posted it at 5 and it booked. But from a carrier perspective, it's also magic because it means I don't have to wake up at 6 a.m. and call a broker and book it.
I don't think we're going to get back to the old Nextel walkie-talkies, Bill. That's the thing I feel the worst about, because when I finally invested in a cell phone many, many, many moons ago, I insisted I wanted to have that walkie-talkie. I'm like, that's going to be like the thing. And it is not the thing, Bill. It's not the thing anymore.
No, I don't know if people even talk on phones anymore. It's like,
wait, what are you doing calling me? You could text me. Why? First text me before you call me. You can't just call me out of the blue. What?
I call my team all the time, and I think it's what? Oh,
is something happened? Were you in trouble? No. It's just I want to hear your voice. Oh, interesting.
I just had some time. I'm just calling to talk through Like, oh, okay.
Well,
Yeah.
Bill, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show as always. People can find you on LinkedIn. Where else can they find you?
You can email. I'm at bill@dat.com. I welcome it.
There you go, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I am such a huge fan of what you guys have built, and your own career is probably one of the most interesting in all the supply chain. So thank you for making time with joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, that is our show for today. Let's get some nice music from our good friend Tristan Nolan at Werner Enterprises. Tristan, great tunes. Bill approves. He might be reaching out. He's looking for some theme music for DAT. Dial a Truck. Since 1978, DAT has been helping truckers find freight. And if you're looking to find freight, maybe check out the Convoy platform. Maybe you should do that today. As Bill says, 24 hours, you might be able to start moving some loads. And of course, our friends at Genlogs, that's that way. Look at me, I can do backwards. Lights, camera, action, truck intelligence. You want to know where that truck and trailer is right now? Like right now? Go to Genlogs and you can find it. I guarantee it. Thank you as always, and we'll see you next time on the Armchair Attorney Podcast. Maybe more Supreme Court cases. I don't know. We'll find out. See you next time. And then we hit the end button and it's over. I think. Click, click, click. Done.